Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, as we continue on our journey to be able to understand the language of nature in order to understand the Al-Quran al-Taqweeni. Insha'Allah, we also need to understand how to think and obviously see through the right brain hemisphere, seeing things in terms of relationships, patterns and contexts. And one of the journeys is, as we go through, to be able to see and to think in terms of systems thinking, which is the terminology that we use today. But systems thinking has been there since time began, and to understand the Quran, to penetrate the Quran, particularly in tafakkur and tadabbur, we need a systems thinking approach. Hence we need that comprehensive conquest of the self, the comprehensive conquest of the environment, and the comprehensive conquest of the natural world. And an area that will help us understand this, and when it is important, inshallah ta'ala, in order to understand the language of nature, to understand the Al-Quran al-Taqweeni, is what is an ecosystem. An ecosystem is all of the living and the non-living things in an environment interacting together. Did you hear what I said? An ecosystem is all the living and non-living things according to science. But we have to turn, we can use science, alhamdulillah, which is the study of signs, but we have to turn to the Quran. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is clear that everything He has created, even dust, sand, dirt, wind, has consciousness. Okay? Every aspect of creation has consciousness, which is hard for the Western worldview and science to understand. So let's redress that. An ecosystem is all the living things which has a consciousness in an environment, interacting together. SubhanAllah, now it's making sense. Interacting through the principles of nature, which we also need to learn. This means animals, plants, fungi, bacteria, everything microscopic, and creation that we have no understanding of, that's around us, within us, all interacting with all of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's living elements. Not as in not living elements, but living elements of the complete system. And we have to understand system. What does system mean? So an ecosystem can be big. It can be like a forest, or it can be small, like a decaying log, or maybe a pile of stones. But even the stones has levels of consciousness, and we have to understand that from the Islamic perspective, although science would push back and say categorically no. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Sanurihim, I will continue to show them the signs in the horizons and the signs within themselves. And so inshallah ta'ala, as science progresses, inshallah ta'ala, one day they will understand, yes, the stone also has consciousness. So in an ecosystem, living things have different roles to play. The roles of living organisms in an ecosystem are sometimes broken down into groups: producers, consumers, decomposers, and we can look at that. But that then could take us down the direction of left brain hemisphere and looking at parts, which is okay, as long as we look at the parts, we study the parts, but making sure that we put the parts back into the whole system in order to understand. But if we go into the parts, then we go back into systems thinking as well. We could look at the producers and go deep into the producers, the many producers, but they also have their own systems. Those also have their own communities as well. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that. So this journey of connecting, understanding the Al-Quran al-Taqweeni, which is there in the first ayat of Surah Alaq, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. It's a lifetime work, and hence it's a lifetime work, and we are just students of Aalim, students of Ilm. Okay, Ilm, which is knowledge that is taking us towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Otherwise it's knowledge, and it's just like books in bags on top of a donkey, just like previous nations. So this knowledge that we keep seeking it, inshallah ta'ala, keep seeking it and keep seeking it, so we can keep adding to it and adding to it. So we're studying the Quran, the revelation, and inside the Quran is the book of nature, the Al-Quran al-Taqweeni. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. First of all, we have to study the book of nature. The Quran says this. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Khalaq is the verb. It's a transient word, which means it needs what? It needs an object. The object isn't mentioned. Of course, we know in that ayat, it's the Rabb bismi Rabb, who has created what? Created all of what you can see and what you cannot see. Far, subhanallah, beyond comprehension. So, Iqra, read first.
والشعر من حبك يسيل والشعر من حبك يسيل للقلب سعادة